Hello and a really big warm welcome to this presentation from the Urban Penguin. My name is Andrew Mallett, and in today's presentation we're going to dive out and take a look at Ansible, the configuration management system. We're going to be able to see that we can cater for different versions of Ansible being installed. If we have later than 2.10 or 2.10 or later, we're going to be able to use the full collection name of our modules. Whereas before 2.10, so 2.9 and before, there was no understanding of collections, so we only referenced the module name. Come on, let's see how we check our version of Ansible and cater correctly within our playbook. And look at this, the glorious pixel playground of Ubuntu. But let's check hostname CTL and we can see this is in fact Ubuntu 2004. And we're going to be able to go through and see how we can deal with different versions of Ansible. When we look on our main system, Ansible is already installed. And when I check the version, this is a later version of Ansible, so 2.12.10. These are semantic versions, so it's not really 2.12. With our later versions of Ansible, when we refer to modules within our playbook, we need to reference them by their collection name, the full name. But that's not the case in earlier versions. So we're going to see what happens when we deal with multiple versions of Ansible. And to help do this on the one machine, if we set up a Python virtual environment, we're going to be able to install a completely separate version of Ansible inside of our virtual environment. So let's set up the module that we need to be able to do that. So that's our Python 3.8-venv. And with that module now installed, we can activate our virtual environment, or at least create it by running Python 3 with the module venv. That's the module we just installed. We can tell it the subdirectory to create to where we're going to house our virtual environment. So we'll just call it old. It will create that directory, and we can activate our virtual environment by sourcing from our newly created old directory, the bin subdirectory, and the activate script. Now we can see then that our prompt does change, indicating that we are working in our Python virtual environment, and the environment name, old, is displayed. From here, we're going to install a Python package, wheel. This is needed to allow me to install other packages. Now, we weren't worried about the version of wheel that we put in, but for Ansible, we are going to specify a version. So I'm just putting inside of quotes, Ansible equals 2.9.22. And we can then hit our big enter key and allow this to run through. Where we're looking at Ansible 2.9, this is our older versions that take just the module name and not the full collection name. Ansible 2.9 is not familiar with collections. They came in Ansible 2.10. Now that it is installed, it's completely contained within this environment. And if I use Ansible ---- version, we're going to be able to see then that we have got the earlier release now of 2.9.22. With this then, we can start working out how do we cater within our environment where we have different Ansible controllers. We're only worried about Ansible being installed on our controller, but if we're developing a centralized YAML file, such as my setup.yml playbook here, we want to make sure that this can work on all of our controllers throughout our enterprise. So we can go through and name our play. We can call it setup. Here I'm just going to be targeting the local host. I do like to implicitly say that we are collecting facts, so gather facts true. It is the default, but we might as well implicitly say that we are gathering our facts. And then we can start adding in our tasks. So here we can go through and name our task, so we can ensure that there is no tab completion bell from our input RC file. And we can say this is working with version 2.9. We can elevate our privileges. We can elevate our privileges at the play level, which is good if everything is going to need elevation, but it's also good to remind you that you can actually elevate in each of your tasks. We're using the line in file module, and this is just the module name, the old style way of referencing our modules. Then we can start putting the properties of the module. So we want the line in our file to be present, so we can go through and put state present. We can go through and specify the path to the file, so really the file name. So /etc and input RC. And then we can go through and specify the line that we want to add, and that's going to be set bell style null. Now we need to check to see if the line is already there. Obviously we don't need to add if it's already there, but we also need to change any line that is there but is set bell style, let's say, to visible. So we can go through and specify that the line begins with set bell style, and then we don't care the option that we've got. We've just got to check that there is an option that begins set space bell style. So dot and asterisk is saying any character and any amount of characters. If the line doesn't exist, we can insert it. If we don't specify where, it'll be at the end of the file. But we can then go through and specify to add it where the comments are for the set bell style. So we can go through and say the line begins with, and it might be a comment and then the setting, or it might be a space or a few spaces. So we can go through and put our comment, space, asterisk. The asterisk applies to the previous character, the space, and says that we can have any amount of them before we then have set bell style. And again, we don't care what comes after bell style. So we can go through and specify our space, dot for any character, and then any amount of those characters, and close off our quotes. Now we can move back to I want to line up with my module now. So where we've got name, become, and line in file, we can put our when clause. The when clause then can look at the Ansible _version variable. This variable is actually a dictionary, so we can navigate into it to look for the full version, and then using our version function, we can go through and check our version. We can't just go through and check for being greater than or less than, because these are semantic version numbers. So, for example, 2.9 as a number technically is greater than 2.10 because it doesn't see it as 2.10, it sees it as 2.1. So we do need to rely on the version function, and we can go through and specify then as a string 2.10.0 being less than that. Remember, we're working for 2.9 here, so we want a lower version than 2.10. We can then go through and close off our parentheses, and we're just about done on this task. Now, we do need to duplicate this task, and we can then just change it so it works with 2.10 and later. So let's go through and copy these lines. We've got 9 lines, and I can go then and paste them in below, and then make sure we tidy some of this up. Yeah, cut and paste is easy to forget to change everything. So we can go through and put our version 2.10. And we can go through. And now the big change comes in that we put the collection name. So this is going to be ansible.built-in.line-in-file. And then don't forget to change to the when clause. And we can change this to be greater than or equal to 2.1.0. And that's it. Our playbook is complete. So let's dive out, save our changes, and then we can run it inside of our virtual environment where we've got Ansible 2.9. We can see then that we've run the task, version 2.9, but skipped the task for 2.10. So this is good. It's done what we expect it to do. And when we go through and take a look at our file, /etc/input.rc, we can see there we've got the set bell style null. And that's what we want, so that it has added it and it's added it after the comments. Well, let's go through and delete it and double check that it is working for us when we go through and execute it inside of our main environment. So I can deactivate our virtual environment. We're back working now with Ansible 2.12. So if we go through and execute the same playbook, we should see a different task is executed now. And we can see, sure enough, it's the 2.10 task that has been executed. And of course, it will have made those same changes. So everything is working well for us, but we're able to cater for our different Ansible controllers. When we go through and take a look inside of our input.rc file, we can see then that we've still got our set bell style null. So that's good. We had removed it previously, run it again, and it's working well for us, adding it for both. Of course, I can run it the playbook again, and now we skip the 2.9 task, and we don't need to carry out any work for the 2.10 task because we already make those requirements. Now, if we drop back into our playbook, as I say, we only have the simple 2 tasks here. You're likely to have more tasks. So you probably would put the when clause against a block and group all of the tasks correctly in their own block. But for a simple demonstration, I just use the 2 tasks.
All that is left to say is thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this, then you are probably sadder than I first thought. For more of this drivel, please subscribe, like and comment to @TheUrbanPenguin.